Today's episode, we're going to talk about an emotion that you maybe have stuffed down inside, haven't quite known what to do with. Maybe in the past, you've been made wrong for feeling it, and it's kind of uncomfortable not knowing what to do with it. I'm talking about anger, and there's a lot of it in today's society, and it's always been with us. It's a great indicator, but if you don't know what to do with it, it can be misplaced and it can cause a lot of damage. But it also can be very powerful when it's wielded in a way that's productive. So I have with me today Jonathan Dugger. He's back from Italy. We're so excited, and we're going to dive into that. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alecia St. Germain, founder of the Conscious Edge, where I help women entrepreneurs expand what they can hold emotionally, energetically, financially, so they can build businesses that are sustainable and fulfilling. Jonathan, welcome home.
Thank you. Thank you.
How is Italy?
I'm happy to be here today. Oh, it was wonderful. Good food, good people. Yeah. Good surroundings. It was a wonderful trip.
It was fun to watch, and definitely I sent a picture of a gypsy wagon, and I said to Jonathan, can we just buy this gypsy wagon and go travel the countryside of Italy? And he goes, I'm packed.
Got my bag. Actually hadn't unpacked yet, so it was really, really easy to do that.
We're going to talk today about anger. We talked about doing a monthly mindfulness episode. Mindfulness is your passion, your thing that you're really putting a lot more emphasis on in 2026, and not just overtly working it into trainings that you're doing, but really being open about how mindfulness is so powerful. And anger was the one that was speaking, the part of mindfulness that relates to anger and how mindfulness can help with anger was what you wanted to talk about today. So just to give people a little framing of what is the intention today in this conversation around anger.
So anger is a very misunderstood emotion. We put it in a category that it's always bad, and we equate anger and aggression, and they're not the same thing. Anger can be a fuel for aggression. Like you said, there's directions anger can take a person that's not in charge of that emotion that can lead to very negative outcomes. But anger is also a fuel for change and creativity and pushing through other hard situations and hard emotions. So today I really wanted to take some time to talk about how anger shows up, how our bodies respond to it often, where our minds go related to it, and what we can do in a very specific and tangible way, utilizing some approaches to mindfulness to really understand how anger affects us directly, biologically, physically, how it affects us emotionally, and what may be fueling the repetition of some of those potentially negative outcomes or impulsive outcomes. I also wanted to spend a little time talking about this in the context of for entrepreneurs and business owners, because anger doesn't always show up. Often it doesn't show up, especially in a professional setting, as something that's very overt and in your face and aggressive or even rage-like. It shows up as frustration. It shows up as impatience. It shows up as having a quick fuse, like making snap judgments or snap decisions. It shows up as avoidance. behavior. So I want to take the context around, sort of a professional setting, working as an entrepreneur, and talk a little bit about some of those other layers that come into play in those cases too.
Awesome. Well, before we get into it, if you are new here, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We produce these episodes every single week. They come out on Tuesdays, and Jonathan is here with me at least once a month to bring the mindfulness and compassionate leadership aspect of the podcast. We also have a monthly money talk with Jen, who is a financial strategist. And we really are exploring all the aspects of what it's like being a human, building a business, the experiences that you have as you interact with society and individuals, and how that affects your business, how what's happening in your home life affects your business, and how what even you choose to do inside of your business affects your business. So nothing is off the table. And this feels like a very timely episode. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure that you take a moment, hit subscribe or follow from wherever you're listening, and leave a review so that we can get the word out to more people. Okay. So where do you want to start with this? There's a lot to unpack here. Even as you were talking, I was like, just be prepared. I think this is going to be a really emotional episode because as you were talking about anger being a catalyst for change, like I got a lump in my throat and my eyes started to tear up because it can be so powerful. And how many inspiring people do we see write a book, speak from stage, and they're telling their story about why they started a foundation or why they lobbied for change in laws, and it oftentimes has an undercurrent of anger that they were not willing to tolerate things staying the same. So that definitely hit me really in my heart very deeply. So be prepared. Today may be emotional.
Yeah, for sure. Alecia didn't mention it, but I'll go ahead and confess, if you will. We had planned to record this episode a week ago, 2 weeks ago, right after I'd gotten back from my trip. And I just was not in a place where I felt like I could do it in an authentic way because I wanted to be able to deliver something that really was rooted in a mindful approach. And the mindful part of me said it wasn't time. I wasn't in a place where I could do that yet. So we are in very challenging times right now in a lot of different ways on an international scale. And anger is being fueled for a lot of people. There's a lot of triggering going on. So
where do we start?
I want to talk a little bit about anger itself and some of the faulty definitions around it and how it shows up. And then I want to track back to I know those of you that have been listening regularly, you've heard me talk about mindfulness quite a bit and go through some definitions and some of the work around it that I do. But I'm going to track back to that just for a couple of minutes, just to talk a little bit about mindfulness and what it is and what it isn't. And then my plan is for all of us to take a few minutes and actually go through you could call it a guided meditation, you could call it breath work, but some tools that we can implement to help us regulate, self-regulate, and help others regulate. Because as we've talked about before, when we manage ourselves, when we find our own peace, it affects those around us in positive ways too. So
can we start with like the biology of it, maybe?
Yeah. So anger is a threat response. So you can think of it when, we were hunters and gatherers and dodging dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers. Fear is also a threat response, but anger is one that provides fuel to face and confront. And it is a very powerful biological tool that allows us to do things that we don't normally do physically and mentally. But the way that anger can work or does work biologically is it also shuts down other things in our body in order so that we can perform superhuman acts of strength and very, very targeted cognitive processing and problem solving. So there's parts of our brains that actually turn off when anger takes over. And some of those things that turn off are elements of logic and reasoning. Like, does this make sense? Is this something that's going to have lasting effects? Is this something that could cause issues or problems in the future? And then biologically, it affects all sorts of systems of the body. Our blood pressure goes up. We dump more sugar into our system. Our stress hormone, cortisol, jumps up. Some of these things that are necessary in the moment, but if they stay in place, they hurt us.
Yeah.
Literally. They start shutting down organ response and cause ongoing issues like high blood pressure and anxiety and depression and diabetes and all sorts of lifestyle illnesses that can come up from the holding on to anger, keeping anger as part of our daily process.
It makes me think, so from an example standpoint, like a real life example, immediately where my brain went when you're talking about survival is I remember in being taught how to protect yourself as a woman. I don't know what they teach men, but as a woman, like they say, if someone attacked you, what would you do? And they're like, I'd be scared. I'd scream. Okay, what if someone attacked your child? It's like, I'd be ready to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying, okay, you got to have that kind of anger to protect yourself, though, too, versus. So that was where my brain went. And it's like, aha, okay, now I see where anger like helps me protect myself and where you access anger. But also, we don't have to walk around and be angry all the time. That's what I'm also hearing.
Right.
Like, that's a heightened state for a short time.
Exactly. And often the threat is not equal to the response.
Yeah.
So the threat that we perceive has a response that's way more exaggerated than the threat demands. But that's because it was originally hardwired as an all or nothing sort of fuel. So very, very flammable.
So if something happens to you and you have like a way over the top anger response to it, it was like the response was not in like equal balance to what happened. It was like a way exaggerated response. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to, again, through that lens of entrepreneurs and business owners, you'll hear this about entrepreneurs sometimes, especially ones that are very, what I would call highly active, high performing, that sometimes they have a short trigger. Like you hear that, or they're easily triggered or things like that, that'll be around. It's like, oh, it's just part of who they are. It's just, well, there's some truth to that. And it's because often entrepreneurs are running at a low level of risk all the time. And if you think about it, we're constantly gauging we're assessing financially. So financial risk, we're responsible for others and the outcome of others. We're under time pressure, time constraints all the time. Our identity for our business and for ourselves quite often is tied to outcomes, to performance. So that's sort of a low level of threat going on all the time. So you add layers on top of that, you can see why that can build very, very quickly, or why we can exaggerate a threat, an unexpected threat, because it taps into something that we're already concerned about on a subconscious level.
Well, and now the other thing that pops into my head, and I don't mean to take you on a tangent, but we talked in an episode about how entrepreneurs have a higher incidence of ADHD, and that the wiring there in the threat responses for those individuals, they naturally are short-wired even a little differently too towards that emotion of anger, like thinking of how they just, I'm one that I have to really watch because my anger can really, and it's so funny because I tell people I have to be mindful of my anger. And they're like, I can't imagine that. I'm like, because I have messed up so much in my life around anger. So much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
I can completely relate to that. I mean, I was a kid with very little impulse control. I mean, I was known as a kid that would go from 0 to really, really pissed off very, very quickly. And I'm also the kind of person that tears come with anger. So when I was younger, somebody that didn't know me would see tears and they'd be like, oh, crybaby. Those that did know me would run the other way.
Same. And then I'd be mad. And then I would be mad that I was crying and that I was being misunderstood. Like, you don't understand how mad I am right now.
Exactly. Well, that's perfect segue to the next piece I was going to bring up. So in our society, and this is very true in professional settings, anger is almost always followed by regret. Even if it's managed appropriate for the setting, how many times have you told yourself, I should not have gotten that angry? First, you question it. Why did I get angry? Which we're going to get back to that. That's actually a good question to ask. But telling yourself, I should not have gotten that angry, or this is not the right setting for anger. Or I don't have time for anger. That's another one I hear. I don't have time for this. Why, this anger's just distracting me from these things. So, but regret that would probably be the most, if you ask somebody and really dug into how they were feeling after a time when they got really angry, it would be regret or guilt. Those two go hand in hand. So some of that's our society. Some of it has some religious connotations. There's a lot of layers that go with that because there are other societies that don't respond that way to anger. That's not a common, I feel guilty, but it's very common in our society. And I would say, especially in professional settings. So we'll dig into that a little bit too. But I read a quote and I couldn't find it last night and I didn't have time to ask the Google this morning, but I wrote it down because I think it speaks to what we're talking about. It's like anger shows up to protect you, but it's not great at nuance. It's not great at nuance. It's like, I'm going to do this however I need to do it. It's not selective and saying, okay, the best path. So it's not very wise. Anger doesn't have a lot of wisdom.
It's like a frontline warrior.
So that's
like no offense, but like it's just like
exactly. Ask questions later. So Yosemite Sam. Anger is Yosemite Sam. For any of you that are old enough to remember that cartoon. Yep. So that's part of segueing into just this definition of mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us tap into nuance, to tap into wisdom. So in order to get to nuance when we are in a heightened emotional state, whether it's anger or something else, we've got to find a place of calm. We've got to find a moment, be able to take a moment, take a beat. If you're a parent, you probably had told your kids that many times. Just take a minute. You need a minute. Or you ask them, do you need a minute? So mindfulness helps us in those ways. And mindfulness really is a state of being. We talk about it often in the framework of the tools that come with it or that we bring to bear to get to that state of being. But mindfulness is a state of being that is centered around removing judgment from any situation within ourselves and outside of ourselves. So utilizing some of the tools that we'll talk a little bit about today, but utilizing tools and approaches to get us to a place where we can be curious about a situation, ask questions about a situation or an emotion or another person or something that we're experiencing in a way that's not judgment loaded, where we can take a break from all the other messaging that's layered onto our lives and ask clear, concise questions that are not about an expected outcome. Yeah. And there's lots of different ways to practice and to work on getting to that state of being of mindfulness. And then from a research standpoint, we're learning how important this aspect can really be for our physical health, for our emotional health, for our relationships, and that we can apply mindfulness approaches to almost any given situation that we construe as problematic. So I'm going to ask you the question. Do you think it would be a good time to go ahead and step through a mindfulness exercise to kind of address?
And I think that in the context of anger,
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be really helpful.
All right. Well, I'm going to read my script
So
I don't get off track.
Yeah, we're going to cue it up here a little bit. So what we want to do is take you through in the context of something you're carrying anger around. And it's always interesting to me, Jonathan, because when we've done any episode that talks about anger, either like I think about when I, will talk about something that triggered me and how I worked through it, and I was really angry, or whatever it is, anything that I have ever written an email about or done a podcast episode around anger, it is the fastest place that I see people jump off. Like, it's like, oop, anger, I'm out, bye.
Yeah.
So I have the highest unsubscribe rates around anger. So I've always found that really fascinating. But I also don't believe that people don't have something in their head right now that is a frustration, an anger, or whatever. So I think before you do this exercise, can we talk about the nuances of how anger shows up? Help someone get something in their mind they've got some anger around, and then take us through an exercise. How does that sound?
Okay, sure. I mentioned earlier, one of the direct responses to anger is avoidance. So what you're describing is avoidance behavior, because just hearing the word or introduction of the subject or something related to the subject often will be a trigger for people to, okay, nope, I don't need any of that.
Uh-huh.
And it's either from a place of avoidance or denial of, I don't need that, or almost a subconscious level of, this could trigger me in some way. This could add to. But there's already an expected outcome of regret or guilt that's coming to bear. So let's just avoid it altogether. So I think especially right now when it's impossible. I'm just going to say this, and I don't usually speak in absolutes, but it's pretty much impossible to avoid anger right now. You can stay in a place of denial all you want, but on some level, it's affecting you, whether you acknowledge it or not.
It's just
You're pissed off about something, or for someone else, or for a situation. We're surrounded by it constantly. It's in the media, it's on social media, it's in your household, it's in your workplace. And now more than ever, I think it's important to address it head on. To say, this is happening. And so that's where I would start with this, around I bring up language a lot. Well, and I'd probably get pushback from other mental health practitioners and other types of therapeutic techniques and stuff, but I don't like it for myself, and I say it to others too, I don't like using the language, I am angry. I'm angry. I'm so angry right now. I try and change that internally as anger is here. I feel angry right now, because I don't want to ever get to a place where I become anger. Anger is a part of what I'm experiencing, but I don't want to live in a state of being of anger. I know that seems subtle and maybe not important to some folks, but for me personally, I try, and it helps me take a beat. It helps me take a minute when I say, because I've got myself, I am just so angry right now. It's like, wait, I feel angry right now.
It's not permanent. It's not a permanent state.
Exactly.
It's a response. It's a response to something. It's a response to a thought. right? A thought creates
Yes.
a feeling, whether it's conscious or unconscious, it's a response to a thought,
Yep.
is really what comes down to in all of our emotions. So I can definitely understand that. And the other thing I was going to say is, even if you are someone who specifically is, I want to say, protecting your peace, like there's protecting your peace and your mental well-being, and then there's avoidance. But even if you're someone who's protecting your peace, you're still being influenced. Your day is being influenced by anger, because it might not be yours, but it's in the way someone else treats you. And then it's in the feeling that you get in the response to the way that they treated you. So that anger can move about your day as an underlying current, even if you are someone who is protecting your peace.
Yes.
So these are things like frustration. These are, like you said, the snapping, something you've been tolerating that maybe you've been excusing because it's on a small scale, it's something you're tolerating. It doesn't have to be so outward and egregious.
And the avoidance or the denial aspect often will show up in those sort of sideline emotional states of frustration, but it also shows up physically. It disturbs your sleep.
Mhm.
It affects your eating patterns. It affects your immune system. So it actually becomes dangerous to suppress or to deny or to avoid true emotion, strong emotion, however it's showing up.
Yeah.
So it's much more important to take it head on and
Yeah.
find these mindful approaches that can help you try to understand where it's coming from and what it's doing to you.
I remember being in a training room in a hotel and in front of 50 people training. And maybe something was not like, the hotel was not handling something, and they were kind of notoriously, we get blown off by hotel staff for like,
Yeah.
things. And if it was affecting the environment for which we were training, and it meant that the people in the seats were not getting the value because they were so distracted or uncomfortable or whatever it was, it would make me so angry. And I remember the feeling of physically like taking anger and swallowing it down and shoving it into my stomach to keep calm in front, because I don't want to lose it in front of 50 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that feeling of shoving it down into my stomach. And I could see where if you do that all the time, that is going to affect you. I mean,
Yep.
physically manifest as things like ulcers and things. So, okay, we think we've given people an ample opportunity to think of something they have some anger around. All right.
All right. So if you're driving, of course, don't close your eyes. But if you're in a place where you can take 3 minutes or so and just close your eyes, or I'm not a great with my eyes closed in a meditative state. So find a fixed place to focus. And if it's a place that, if you have a picture in your room or a plant that you like, or to look out the window, find a place where you can just focus your vision for a little bit, get in comfortable position, and then give yourself a moment just to recognize what's going on around you, what the chair you're sitting in feels like, how your feet feel on the floor, how the clothes you're wearing feel next to your skin. Notice any smells or noises or things in the room that you can sense around you as well. And just let all those sit where they are. Don't try and block anything out. Don't try and adjust anything. Now, I want you to take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and hold it for 3, 2, 1, and exhale slowly through your nose. Now, one more time in, deep breath, hold it, 3, 2, 1, and exhale slowly. And just let your breathing go in a nice, slow, relaxed pace. Noticing the air traveling in and out. Now, I want you to bring to mind a recent moment of irritation or anger where you started feeling it in your body and in your system and in your emotions and in your mind. Not the most intense thing that maybe you've experienced recently, but something real, something that's happened very recently, maybe this morning, maybe the past couple of days, but something that was real and noticeable. As you think about that and ponder that, where do you feel it in your body? Notice where you feel it in your body. Does it show up as heat? Tightness somewhere? Maybe an internal pressure or tension? If it is a certain spot or location in your body and you feel comfortable doing this, place your hand over that spot. Now, I want you just to say to yourself, anger is here. I feel anger here. Anger is present. Now, internally, just say to yourself, this is only a moment of stress. I care about something and I feel threatened. This is a response to something I care about. You're not excusing the behavior. You're acknowledging that your body and your brain and your heart are doing their job. Now ask yourself, what would the calmest, wisest version of me do next? What would the calmest, wisest version of me do next? Not perfectly, not forever, just next. And let whatever comes to mind be enough. And if nothing comes to mind, that's okay too. You're learning, you're growing, and you're thinking about it from a place of curiosity. Now take one more slow breath in through your nose. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly. One more breath in through your nose. Deep, deep, deep. Hold. 3, 2, 1. Exhale slowly. Now, when you're ready, bring your attention back to the room. Now, what we just did, you didn't eliminate anger. Anger didn't go anywhere, but you created space around it. You created a moment. You took a beat. That was maybe 3 minutes. And that space you just created is where change happens. That's where you become a better leader, a better parent, a better you, version of you when you're angry. Now, I'm not going to pretend this is always easy, but there are versions of what we just did you can practice and learn to do in the moment very, very quickly. And the whole take a breath thing really works. And one thing that you've probably seen this I've seen this a lot on social influencers fairly recently, so somebody must have done a thing on it. But our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system that controls unconscious process like breathing and heart rate. If you breathe in and then breathe out longer than you breathe in, it actually taps the parasympathetic system to calm the system. So if you breathe in for 3 and then breathe out for 5. So I do a 3-4-5 technique sometimes. In 3 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 5 seconds, and do that 3 or 4 times. It changes your state of being in that moment. It changes what your body's doing and your brain's doing in that moment. So getting to that place where you can take a moment and start trying to discover what's triggering you. How does this show up? Why is this showing up anger? And it's anger right now when maybe it wouldn't at another time. And especially with things that are going on in the world around us that we don't have any direct control over, that can be a constant state of frustration where you feel like you should be helping, you want to help, you don't know how to help. So you're frustrated, which turns into anger or is part of your anger. So figuring out where those triggers are coming from and then working on, is there a direct solution for myself in this moment that I can be doing? And maybe that's something as simple as turning the TV off. And that's not avoidance. It's finding a place of peace and calm so you can process, you can remove the distractions to work on this some more. And I think, like I told you guys earlier, I think that's what I had to do. I had to find a place to get back to a place of calm. So I'm not going to say I'm calm all the time, but where I'm in a place of calm more than not, so I can feel authentic in talking to this about with other people.
As I was going through your exercise, it was interesting because what would the wiser version of me do? And there was a piece of like, this is not and it was a very specific incidence. It's not anything, it was something within our home. And it was like, this is not your concern. Like, this is not actually yours to carry.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, it's not really me avoiding, but it was interesting how the anger showing up in a time when I felt helpless. Like I cared deeply and I felt helpless. And so then anger wanted to like show up and fix it.
Yeah.
And it's like, but this isn't yours. So it's interesting that that moment is helpful for the discernment of where should I insert myself? Where should I not insert myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an important distinction as well, because so often a lot of helpers and people who are caregivers and who nurturers, people who want to be helpful, oftentimes insert themselves, and I'm using that word very strategically, into things that are actually yours because you maybe want to protect. And I'm guilty of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to protect someone from a bad outcome or from something happening that's uncomfortable. And it's also where people grow, is in discomfort, in facing the consequences of decisions that they make, in the accountability side of things happening. And very often we want to step in and we want to protect someone. And then we get angry when they don't do what we say. And right. And so it's also really accepting the human journey for people and letting them sit in their consequences,
And their stuff.
sit in their stuff. Doesn't mean we don't be supportive. Doesn't mean we don't have empathy for them, but also there's so many things I've learned, like I don't actually need to carry anger around because it's not mine to control. So those are some of the things that came up for me during your...
I love that you use the word discernment, because also when you become more adept at building that space and it becomes a natural part of your process, that's when you can examine judgment. And there's a big difference between judgment and discernment. Judgment is rarely helpful. It may never be helpful.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, anger is a fuel to judgment that is often hate is the other side of it.
Mm.
So something that has very negative connotations is fueled often by anger when we have that layer of judgment. But when you can take that moment and then also add another layer, a layer of compassion for yourself and for others and for situations, compassion can be the key to really unraveling negative consequences of anger. And Compassion helps you downshift without disengaging. Compassion is a connection tool.
Mhm.
So it's not avoidance. It's not, but it lets you de-escalate without disengaging. And it comes from a place of strength and not reactivity. Actually, reactivity and lack of impulse is not a sign of strength, but finding the ability to rein yourself into a place where you can make conscious decisions and work on some insight into what's going on. That's a place of strength. I read another quote that I really liked, and I didn't write it down, but it's something like compassion gives you access to strength without hostility and to firmness without, there's another word than hostility, but to still be able to be firm, but not be aggressive or hostile.
Yeah. I love that. So I hope that today, perhaps if you've been carrying this anger with you, that it gave you a moment to sit with it. It took you 3 minutes to do that exercise. This is something with practice that you can do in 30 seconds. There's very often times where I have snapped at my kiddos for something and I'll go, and I'll do a couple deep breaths and I'll go, okay, I was very frustrated. I shouldn't have reacted that way. Can we start over? And that's a common thing to do in our house, but we can shift in a couple minutes. Now, 30 seconds, we can sit with anger and say, I feel angry. What's going on? And oftentimes it's not even about what the thing is never the thing. That's the other thing we say in our house. The thing is never the thing.
Exactly.
It's usually something else. It's usually deeper. It's something else you were carrying from your day. And that's been really supportive for us in removing the reaction, the action that sometimes gets paired with anger, where you can just learn to just say, I feel angry. And I remember a really great thing my mom has taught me is if something makes you angry, like something big, like you're really, really angry, she would always say, I will sit with it for 3 days. And if I'm still angry after 3 days, then I know I need to say something. I know I need to address it, and very likely in a different state than when it happened. So I've always followed that. Like if I'm really angry about something, and a lot of times by the time I hit day 3, I'm not really angry about it. I've got some different perspective about it. I've given myself the time to look at it from someone else's angle. I've realized it wasn't mine to carry, whatever it is. There's a lot of things that I haven't had to address, or if I did, I was able to do it from a place of compassion. So way to go, Mom. That was good advice.
Yeah, very good. That actually just made me think of a good acronym that you can practice or to remember when anger shows up. It's CLEAN, CLEAN. Calm your body. Label the emotion. Examine the story. So the story you're telling yourself. Align with your values. And what's the next wise action?
I love that. So powerful. I think that is a perfect place to end the podcast today. So with all of that being said, I'm sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.